Hi everyone, and welcome to a beginner's guide to XACML, a tutorial on extensible authorization using XACML and ALFA. In this first part, we will focus on attribute-based access control. Let's begin with a couple definitions. First of all, XACML is the Extensible Access Control Markup Language. It is a standard defined by OASIS. It is currently in its third version. Version 3 was approved as a standard in January 2013. It is XML based. It is policy based, meaning that authorization is no longer expressed in code, but rather expressed as policies that are centrally managed and maintained. It is also attribute based, which is the focus of today's tutorial. We use attributes as building blocks to the policies of XACML. ALFA is the Axiomatics language for authorization. It is pseudocode used by developers to write authorization policies in a syntax more familiar to the developers. The syntax is very similar to Java or C#, and there is a one-to-one mapping between ALFA and XACML, making ALFA translatable into XACML. To achieve the translation, we will use a plugin called the ALFA Plugin for Eclipse. Eclipse is a popular Java IDE that allows for plugins to be added onto its main IDE to add features such as the translation from ALFA to XACML. The plugin is available for download from the axiomatics.com website. It is a free plugin for non-commercial use. So let's have a look at a use case to illustrate attribute-based access control. We will focus on a car dealer use case, a company that buys and sells cars, and the main item we will be working on will be purchase orders. Employees will want to create, approve, and edit purchase orders. We will have to define vocabulary. We will have to define those attributes that are the building blocks of our policies. What is a purchase order? What is a user? What is an employee? How are they represented? What are the attributes that these employees and purchase orders have that we want to use to express authorization? And of course, once we've defined the vocabulary, we can actually start writing the actual rules in plain old English. So let's have a look at some sample vocabulary we can use today. First of all, fine-grained authorization, attribute-based access control is not just about the user, it's also about the resource. And when we say the resource in this example, we mean the purchase order. The sort of attributes that we can use to describe the resource are, of course, the type of the resource, but more specifically, the amount of the purchase order, as well as the location where the purchase order was issued or created, as well as the person, the employee ID, who created that purchase order, who bought the car in the first place, that would be the purchaser, and possibly as well the status of the purchase order. And this list could grow on. It is definitely not a fixed list. It will grow as much as your use case will require. Users or subjects also have attributes. First and foremost, of course, the identity of the user, but more interestingly, we can also look at the department of the user. Do they belong to purchasing? Do they belong to sales? We can look at their location. What state do they work in? We can look at their own approval limit. We could envisage, and we will see that at a later stage, that employees are not allowed to approve or create just any purchase order. And of course, we can look at the usual typical attribute called role, whether an employee is a manager, a contractor, a purchasing manager, and so on. We can also look at the action attributes. In this example, we'll have an action type. Is it view a PO? Is it create a PO? Is it delete a PO? Is it approve a PO? And finally, we can also focus on contextual attributes, context or environment attributes, such as the type of device the user is using, which allows for device-based access control. The IP address of the user to restrict access to sensitive information from a given location, but also a time of the day if, for instance, no single purchase order should be approved after 5 p.m. in any business day. Let's have a look at the first rule that we will be implementing in part 2 of this tutorial. Users in the purchasing department can raise purchase orders. This is a very simple rule. Let's break it down into the building blocks, into the attributes. Number 1, purchasing department. That is an attribute of the user. To what department does the user belong? They belong to purchasing. Number 2, the action. Here the action is raising or creating a purchase order. Number 3, the type of resource we're dealing with. We're dealing with a resource of type purchase order. So here we've identified the 3 building blocks of the policy. A user in the purchasing department, attribute number 1, can raise, attribute number 2, purchase orders, attribute number 3. In the second part of this tutorial, we will look at how we implement this role in the ALFA syntax. This here is a quick example of Whet Your Appetite, shows how we have a role at the very beginning. You can see it here, and that role will have a target that focuses on the 3 attributes we just described in the previous slide: purchasing for the user department, raise for the action ID, and purchase order for the resource type. The role yields a permit, meaning that any user in the purchasing department is allowed to raise a purchase order. Thanks for listening in, and we'll see you on the next session.